It only takes a few seconds for a person to go missing. It may not seem possible, but it's true. In the most bizarre cases, fully grown adults can seem to vanish in the blink of an eye, driving home from work, walking away from their cars, or outdoors in broad daylight. These cases are made all the more unsettling by the unusual circumstances of the strange disappearances and the dozens of unanswered questions they leave behind. Those who knew the missing people can only hope that advances in investigative technology and the dedicated work of experts will someday bring closure to these eerie true crimes. Number 5. Audrey Mae Herron stood just 5 feet tall, but despite her short stature, she had a big personality. The 31-year-old mother of 3 worked as a nurse at a residential home and long-term care facility in Catskill, New York, a job that was both physically and mentally demanding. But despite working long hours, including some late-night shifts, Audrey was a devoted mother. She brought her kids with her everywhere, especially her oldest daughter, Sansia. Sansia loved going with her mom to visit friends and go shopping. The pair had a standing tradition of girls' dates, where they got their nails done and went out to the movies and out to dinner. Audrey would even play Sansia's favorite video games. Sansia idolized her mother, and she was close with Audrey's husband and her stepfather, Jeff, as well as her 2 young half-siblings. When Sansia was 10 years old in the summer of 2002, she spent a month with her grandmother in Florida. Although it was a dream vacation for any little girl, by the end of it, Sansia was ready to get back to her family. She had spoken with her mom on the phone nearly every day, and on days when Sansia didn't speak to Aubrey, her grandmother, Aubrey's mother, Shirley, made sure to check in. On August 29, 2002, Shirley drove Sansia in her RV from Florida back to New York. Aubrey was scheduled to work the late shift that night, and she wouldn't be able to pick Sansia up. She wasn't going to be done with work until 11 p.m., so she told her daughter and mother that she would swing by the following morning after attending a planned doctor's appointment. At 6 o'clock in the morning on the 30th, Shirley's phone rang. It was Jeff, Audrey's husband. She hadn't come home from work last night. Was it possible that she'd stayed at Shirley's house? This wasn't abnormal for her, but she usually would have called home, and Jeff was getting worried. Shirley said no, she hadn't seen her daughter. Jeff still seemed calm and said that he had a few more places to call, so Shirley dozed off. An hour later, she was awoken again. He hadn't been able to locate his wife, and he was starting to worry. Shirley was concerned too. She had a family member in law enforcement, so she and Jeff decided that they needed to report Audrey missing. It had been just a few hours, but the police began the search quickly. Yet, despite the relatively short turnaround, baffled investigators could find no trace of Audrey. She had shown up for her shift on the 29th, and her coworkers reported that she'd left on time at 11. Wearing dark green medical scrubs and a blue turtleneck, Audrey got into her black 1994 Jeep Cherokee and prepared to make the short drive home from work. Somewhere along the route, both she and her car vanished. New York State Police investigators arrived at Audrey's home the same day that she was reported missing and thoroughly searched it for clues, including any notes or indication that she might have planned to leave, but they found nothing. Furthermore, Audrey's mother, Shirley, was convinced that her daughter wouldn't have left her family on her own. She suspected that someone had taken Audrey and for years has continued to hold out hope that her daughter is still out there. Investigators on Audrey's case cleared her home and quickly came to suspect that something unplanned had happened, either an accident or some kind of foul play. They mobilized dozens of aviation and dive crews to thoroughly search a 9-mile radius surrounding the area of Audrey's work and home. In 2002, there was one security camera which captured part of Audrey's home from work. The video, which is grainy and low quality, appears to show Audrey's vehicle leaving the nursing home and turning left to head west on Country Route 23B. This was in line with Audrey's normal route home, meaning that she at least started heading in that direction. However, the video provides few clues as to Audrey's current whereabouts. Once the search of the area was complete, including more than 120 miles of roads and trails, police were left with a case that was ultimately cold. Over the years, investigators have received more than 1,000 tips about Audrey's case. Around 2016, 14 years after Audrey was last seen, police followed a lead that brought them to drain a pond and excavate some ground, but the search turned up empty. More recently, in 2022, state police divers searched 3 bodies of water in Greene County, New York, including Catskill Creek. However, once again, no evidence was found. In fact, none of Audrey's belongings have ever been found since that fateful night in 2002. In August of 2022, Audrey's family marked 20 years since they last saw their loved one. Friends, family, and community members held a ride and walk in her name, with funds raised and donated to the Center for Hope, a nonprofit organization created by the parents of a missing child. Speaking to the press in 2022, Audrey's daughter, Sonzia Court, shared that there was a new investigator working on her mother's case, and she's hopeful the new findings will be uncovered. Sonzia said, quote, "It's obviously a sad anniversary, but I stay positive. I try not to give up hope that we will find answers one day." Now an adult, Sonzia is a nurse like her mother was. She said that she remembers at vigils held for Audrey that patients would come to tell her what a wonderful, caring nurse her mother had been to them. She hopes to provide that kind of comfort too. Audrey's missing person case is still open with New York State Police. Her case number is NIC number M822665578. Anyone with information is asked to call the New York State Police, Troop F, Bureau of Criminal Investigation at 518-622-8600 or email nysvicap@troopers.ny.gov. Number 4. The scientist who named the hobo spider was not, as some might expect, a lab technician with a white coat and multiple degrees after his name. But he was a respected researcher and toxicologist all the same. His name was Darwin Kenneth Vest, and along with his sister, he first identified the hobo spider sometime in the 1990s. The pair named the spider for its presumed method of expanding its territory, by hitching rides with unsuspecting humans along major highways in the Pacific Northwest. Native primarily to Europe, the hobo spider was brought to the United States in the 1930s and has since become established in at least 6 northwestern states. Hobo spiders built funnel webs that are open in both ends and tend to live in holes or crevices that allow them to spin these unique structures. There's been some scientific debate about the effects of their bite, although it's now known to be only mildly painful. In the 1990s, it was theorized that a hobo spider bite was capable of producing a necrotic lesion in humans, such as that caused by a brown recluse bite. Because of this, when Darwin identified the species, it was a big deal. Darwin's star was on the rise. In addition to identifying the hobo spider, he was also working on a brand new hobo spider trap kit, which he planned to produce through the company that he owned, Eagle Rock Research. His sister said that a company was interested in purchasing the design, and the deal was going to be lucrative for them both. Unfortunately, the windfall never came to pass. On June 2nd, 1999, in the very early morning hours, Darwin Kenneth Vest vanished without a trace. Not much information about Darwin is available online, apart from his work with spiders. He was born on April 22nd and had recently celebrated his 48th birthday at the time of his disappearance. He stood 5'9" and was fond of thematic dressing, including a watch with a rotating spiderweb design on its face and a belt buckle with a spider on it. His friends called him Dar. He lived in Idaho and attended a weekly trivia game in Idaho Falls at a bar called the Frosty Gator. Dar was self-taught. He had no formal degree, but he was an expert on spider, snake, and plant poisons. He reportedly worked with the FBI and CIA on toxicology, and he was often called into court to testify about spider bites. He lectured and wrote extensively and even once appeared on the Discovery Channel. His specialty was spider venom, which he collected via a process that involved taping an anesthetized spider to a board and delivering a shock to spark venom production. Those who worked with him described him as passionate about his research. According to friends and family, Dar loved to go for walks, even at night. He was known to walk home from nights out, and in 1997, he was assaulted and robbed late at night while out on his own. The assailant, a man named Don Ellingford, was arrested after using Dar's stolen credit card to purchase a hotel room. He was sentenced to 3 years in jail, but was released just a few months before Dar went missing. According to Dar's mother, he was upset that Don had been released and was worried that he would attack him again. Both Dar and his loved ones worried that Don would seek some kind of revenge. However, Don has been questioned in Dar's missing person case and has denied any involvement. Police have reported that there's no evidence to indicate otherwise. On the evening of June 1st, 1999, Dar and his friends walked to the Frosty Gator in Idaho Falls for the weekly trivia night, which they attended consistently. After the game, Dar and another friend transitioned to the Golden Crown Lounge for a nightcap. The hours wore on, and it was very early in the morning of June 2nd when Dar left the lounge. He'd consumed several drinks and reportedly declined offers of a cab, instead preferring to walk even though it was raining. He was never seen again. Several theories have been put forward about Dar's mysterious disappearance. One suggests that his route may have taken him by Snake River, an area where he regularly studied spider habitats. Police officers have theorized that he either fell or was pushed into the water. However, his family members have said that the river was not his usual route home. Despite being the major proponents of this theory, authorities later admitted that Snake River was not thoroughly searched. The reasons for this lapse are unknown. Another theory is that Dar's case may be connected to the business deal which he was said to be making. The company which he was reportedly talking with has never been publicly identified, although reports indicate that it was based in Oregon. However, this theory remains just speculation, as no evidence specifically links Dar's business dealings to his case. Still, the total lack of leads is concerning. How could a grown man vanish without a trace in such a small town? Dar did occasionally travel for research, but always let his family know about his plans. Investigators have said that they don't believe he left of his own accord. 23 years after the fact, Darwin Vest's mysterious missing person case remains unsolved. His family had him legally declared dead in 2004. If alive today, he would be 71 years old. The case is still under investigation by the Idaho Falls Police Department, and anyone with information is asked to call 208-529-1200. Number 3. Ruth Wilson was 16 when she went missing. Today, more than 25 years later, she's still 16 in the minds of her family and friends, loved ones who never got to know the young woman as an adult. Born on January 31st, 1979, Ruth lived in Betchworth, Surrey, a UK town about 20 miles southwest of London. When Ruth was just 3 years old and her young sister Jenny was still a baby, her mother Nesta tragically passed away. Because Ruth was so young, her father kept the truth of what had happened from her. Despite this early trauma, Ruth had a happy childhood. Her father remarried in 1983 when Ruth was just 4, and her stepmother Karen was a maternal figure in her life. Ruth was described as smart and a little bit nerdy. She had a small group of close-knit friends, girls who loved reading and going on bike rides. As she grew older, Ruth got a part-time job working in a music shop and learned to play the piano and the electric guitar. Ruth's interest in music extended to her involvement in the local church, St. Michael's. She attended regularly with her family, and she participated in bell ringing, played the organ, and sang in the choir. In addition to all of these activities, she made time to babysit and was well known by families with children for being a trustworthy and responsible young woman. Her life painted the story of a middle-class ideal. Yet, for Ruth, things were not as they seemed. Several of her friends, as well as her ex-boyfriend, later told investigators that Ruth seemed unhappy at home. She was cagey about why, but made several troubling requests, including begging her best friend, Catherine, to let her go with her family in an upcoming move to Sheffield. Catherine's mother remembered that Ruth slept over just before she disappeared, and had been adamant that she didn't want to go back home, although she didn't say why. In addition, in October of 1995, a month before she would go missing, Ruth ran away from home and hid at another friend's house for a few nights. Catherine suspected she knew what was troubling Ruth. In early October, Ruth had allegedly told Catherine that she suspected her father and stepmother were keeping something from her about her biological mother. Determined to find out the true story, Ruth traveled on her own to London to see if she could find any proof. According to Catherine, this trip confirmed Ruth's suspicions that her father was allegedly not telling the truth. Ruth supposedly told Catherine that she didn't want to talk to her family about this new information. Instead, she only told Catherine and her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Will. Both of them thought that she was unhappy at home and that things were not great. For their part, Ruth's parents have said that although Ruth discovered new information about her biological mother, she was not unhappy at home, and that Catherine and Will are creating a false narrative. Investigators on the case have not confirmed or denied either story. However, whether or not she was unhappy, neither group of Ruth's loved ones were prepared for her to simply vanish. On November 25th, 1995, Ruth finished work and met up with Will and another friend for dinner at an Indian restaurant in town. At the end of the meal, Ruth covered the whole bill and jokingly remarked that it would be something to remember her by. Neither friend thought anything of it until the days after that fateful dinner. The following day, Sunday, Ruth went to church as usual, then to youth group, and then to Will's home. All seemed normal. It was on Monday morning that things went awry. Ruth's parents had gone to work early, and she and her younger sister Jenny were preparing to catch the school bus. They had both finished getting ready when all of a sudden, Ruth seemed to change her mind. She told Jenny that she wasn't going to school that way. Although the abrupt change was unusual, Jenny didn't think it particularly odd that Ruth wasn't going in, as she was in the 6th form and reportedly didn't always go to school for the whole day. Shortly after Jenny left on the school bus, Will stopped by the home and offered Ruth a lift, which she declined. She told him that she would see him later. At around 11:30 on November 27th, Ruth took a taxi to nearby Dorking. She then purchased flowers from a shop on the high street and asked them to be delivered to her stepmother Karen in 2 days. She left no message, just a blank card. Ruth then spent a few hours in the Dorking library and at around 4:15 took a taxi to Box Hill. A scenic viewpoint that's a popular spot for hikers of all ages and levels, the summit of the hill offers clear views of chalk downlands and wooded forests. Ruth's friends told the police that she often visited the area after school before heading home with a group or on her own. On a chilly November weekday, the area was not busy. The taxi driver dropped Ruth off on a bridleway path a short distance from a pub located near the hilltop. This was the last time that she was ever seen. Ruth's behavior as she got out of the cab was strange. The driver said that he thought it was odd that a teenage girl had asked to be dropped off outside in the rain. After she got out, instead of running for cover at the pub, Ruth just stood there, soaking wet, letting the water pour over her. The driver watched her in his rearview mirror as he drove away. She didn't move until he was out of sight. Later that night, Ruth's parents reported her missing to the local police, who quickly opened an investigation. Their first thought was that the young woman had run away. Because the taxi driver came forward fairly early with information on Ruth's last known whereabouts, police narrowed in on the Box Hill area and conducted an extensive search, including with sniffer dogs, helicopters, and heat-seeking equipment. No clues as to Ruth's location were uncovered. However, on Friday, December 1st, 4 days after Ruth was last seen, police found 3 notes hidden under a bush on Box Hill. There were also empty packets of a common over-the-counter painkiller and a half-empty bottle of vermouth located nearby. The police have never divulged the contents of these notes or their relevance to the investigation. However, multiple reporters have confirmed that the notes are believed to be farewells to Ruth's parents, best friends, and an unspecified teenage boy, perhaps Will. Reporters also speculate that the handwriting has been confirmed to be Ruth's. Despite the presence of the notes, police don't have enough evidence to conclude whether Ruth chose to disappear or even if she took her own life. Since she was known to frequent Box Hill, it's possible she left the notes prior to her disappearance. In addition, because the ground search of the area was so thorough, investigators were confident that she hadn't passed away in the area. When she was last seen, Ruth was wearing a red knitted jacket, black velvet pants, and black pixie boots. Some individuals, such as a retired police officer, Liam Macaulay, have theorized that this was an outfit chosen to meet someone, or for getting into another car, as they put it. Macaulay believes that Ruth ran away from home of her own free will. Ruth was never definitely seen again after November 27, 1995. There have been a few credible sightings reported, including CCTV footage captured in Dorking in 1997 that Ruth's parents reviewed and thought that that was their missing daughter. However, there's no concrete proof that can be had to show her friends and family exactly what happened. For their part, Ruth's parents continued to look, although they also emphatically deny the narrative that Ruth was unhappy at home. In 2018, The Guardian spoke to both Catherine and Will, who confirmed that Ruth was troubled. In response, Ruth's parents put out a statement that said they were extremely hurt by this statement and do not recognize this view of Ruth's childhood. They said Ruth always knew about her biological mother's death, but not the exact cause. Sadly, we now know that before her disappearance, Ruth had discovered the tragic circumstances of her mother's death. But equally sadly, she chose not to discuss or question this with any family members. The controversy between accounts only adds an additional layer to what's ultimately a tragic and unusual missing person case. Anyone with information about Ruth can contact the East Surrey Missing Persons team at 01883 316 270 or the Police National Missing Persons Bureau at 0808 100 8777. Information can also be submitted via email at pnmpp.inquiries@mett.pnn.police.uk, or visit the organization Missing Persons by contacting sightings@missingpersons.org. Number 2. In 2004, American student David Sneddon was hiking in Tiger Leaping Gorge in China's Yunnan province. The spot, a scenic canyon near the Jinsha River in southwest China, is said to be one of the deepest gorges in the world, with stunning views of snow-capped mountains on either side. According to local legend, the gorge was named after the maneuvers of a tiger fleeing from a determined hiker. The gorge boasts a number of hikes for all experience levels, ranging from a 3-hour walk to a multi-day round trip that utilizes rickety iron ladders screwed into the stone walls. David had planned for a 2-day round-trip hike. A young man in good shape, he'd spent much of the summer traveling around China, studying and visiting tourist sites. 24-year-old David was the 10th out of 11 children and a born and raised Mormon. He had already served his mission, which is a period of volunteer service ranging from 6 to 24 months in which young Mormons devote themselves to humanitarian assistance and spreading the gospel of their church, often in far-flung parts of the world. David spent 2 years between high school and college serving in South Korea. While living there, he'd become fluent in Korean and was interested in learning more about international relations between the US and East Asian countries. Back in the States, David had begun to study Chinese, and in 2004, he took a study trip to the Institute of Internal Relations in Beijing. He decided to spend the summer in southern China before he vanished to Utah for school. David was joined for part of his trip by a friend and fellow missionary, George Bailey, as they traveled to several tourist sites. In August, George returned to the US, while David stayed in the Yunnan province. George has since said that both he and David felt safe traveling in China, and neither were worried about their plans. Although he was on his own, David was in frequent email contact with his family, updating them regularly about his travel plans while also mentioning how excited he was to come home. Then, without warning, David stopped answering. Exactly what happened next and when is unclear, but what reports have specified is that David's family flew to China not long after he became unreachable, hoping to find their son and bring him home. When they arrived in the area of Tiger Leaping Gorge, they met several people who confirmed that David had been there, including a group of tourists who said that a young Westerner had hiked with them for a few hours. Some tourists even said that they had seen David after he had hiked the gorge. The owner of a Korean cafe in the area also identified David from a picture and said that she had spoken to him in Korean. According to David's brother, the woman said that he told her that he was low on funds and was planning to return home shortly, but no one knew where David might be now. He left some extra gear with an innkeeper in a nearby town, Lijiang, and never returned to pick it up. Chinese authorities told David's family that their son had probably slipped into the Jinsha River and passed away while hiking the gorge. However, the Sneddon family doubted that this was the story for a number of reasons. The trail that David was supposed to be hiking was located more than a mile from the river. In addition, the area was searched by more than 200 volunteers, which located 2 bodies in the site. However, neither was David. Not only did David's family disbelieve that their son had passed away due to a hiking accident, they had another outlandish theory that seemed to get more probable the more they studied it. The Sneddons thought that David had been kidnapped by North Korea. To start with, David was fluent in Korean and had been spending his summer tutoring the children of a woman from Korea who was living in the area. In addition, one of his former mission companions was asked to leave the country by the Chinese government. The individual was reported writing a story about North Koreans who'd fled their home country and had been living nearby on the Chinese border. Finally, David had gone missing just a month after North Korea released Charles Jenkins, an American soldier who defected and had been one of just a few Americans in the country. North Korea does have a documented history of kidnapping, including at least 17 Japanese nationals during the 1970s and 1980s. There's never been a confirmed incident where an American citizen has been abducted, although some have been detained. However, with no evidence of their son's whereabouts, David's family had no way of searching for him and no government support. Since his departure, though, a number of prominent advocates have also come to support the case for abduction. Chief among them is Chuck Downs, a former Pentagon official who worked on a number of abduction-related cases. In 2011, after reviewing David's case, he became convinced that the young man had been taken to North Korea. The following year, in 2012, the Washington Post reported that a Japanese group that works on abduction cases said it had Chinese documents proving that a 23 or 24-year-old American man had been arrested in Yunnan and taken by the North Korean agents. Then, in 2016, a Japanese source seemed to confirm all of the Sneddon family's wildest theories. According to this source, David had been abducted and taken to Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, where he reportedly taught English, got married, and had 2 children. Both of David's parents said that this confirmed their theories, but added that they're hesitant to accept these reports without any proof. However, his mother added that in our hearts, we think he's alive. As for the marriage, the Sneddons say that they're aware that North Korea will often arrange such marriages for abductees in order to stop them from trying to escape. They said that an advocate with a South Korean abductee group told them that David has 2 children, a boy and a girl, and that his wife is named Kim Yoon-hae. Despite these radical claims, there have been no major updates on David's case since 2018, when the US House and Senate passed dual resolutions calling on the State Department and the intelligence community to continue investigating the case. To this day, the young man remains missing. Whether he perished in China, is still alive in North Korea, or is somewhere else, his parents continue to hold out hope that they will one day be reunited. David's loved ones maintain a Facebook page for him called Bringing David Lewis Sneddon Home, where they share updates periodically. Number 1. The bizarre missing person case of Laurie Depies took place in what seemed like the blink of an eye. In just minutes, Laurie was gone without a trace, leaving behind no evidence and a trail of unanswered questions that continue to haunt investigators decades later. 20-year-old Laurie Depies had short brown hair and green eyes. She lived in Appleton, Wisconsin in the 1990s. She had a tattoo of an Indian art form that resembled a squid on her right ankle, and she went by the nickname Lauriella and Ella. That's the scant information available online about Laurie that isn't related to her disappearance. Tragically, the young woman went missing in 1992, well before the days of online footprints. She left behind few traces for investigators to look into. Yet, despite the limited information that's available today, Laurie lived a full life. She had a boyfriend, Mark, and was friends with her coworkers at the Fox River Mall. Laurie loved jewelry. She was wearing multiple necklaces, rings, anklets, and earrings on the August evening that she was last seen. And she made a big impact. She's thoroughly missed by her relatives, friends, and colleagues, even more than 30 years after her mysterious disappearance. On August 19, 1992, Laurie wrapped up her shift at the mall at around 10 p.m. She walked with a friend to her car, a gray 1984 VW Rabbit with a noisy muffler. She said goodbye to her friend and hopped in the car, planning to drive over to her boyfriend's apartment in nearby Menasha, Wisconsin. Laurie pulled up between 10:15 and 10:30 p.m. Her boyfriend heard her car pulling into the parking lot from inside his apartment, where he was hanging out with his sister and friend. After a few minutes, though, Laurie hadn't come upstairs. The group headed down to see what was taking so long. In the apartment complex's parking lot, they saw Laurie's car locked with a styrofoam cup of soda left on the hood, like she or someone else had just set it down. There was no sign of Laurie, and her purse and overnight bag were still in the car. Mark has said that he quickly went from thinking Laurie was goofing around to realizing something definitely wasn't right. After searching the area for more than an hour and a half, the group notified the local police. When police arrived at the scene, they noted that there were no signs of a struggle. The cup was found to have an unidentified thumbprint left on it, likely from a man. Other than that, no evidence was found. No one had seen Laurie, and she didn't seem to have screamed or made any noise. Within a span of minutes, Laurie had just vanished. Authorities have theorized that Laurie was abducted by someone she knew, meaning she went willingly with the person. They believe that she was harmed after she'd gotten into this person's car. However, what makes Laurie's case so unusual 30 years after the fact is that there are not one, but 3 plausible suspects who may have been involved in the young woman's disappearance. Police first suspected a convicted criminal named David Spanbauer, who killed 3 women in 1992 and 1994. He was interrogated after his arrest in '94 but denied all involvement. Spanbauer passed away in prison in 2002, and although his movements are unaccounted for on the night of August 19th, he's generally considered the least likely suspect. The other 2 individuals have both been accused by a range of credible investigators. The first suspect, however, has gone so far as to offer a confession. Larry Hall, a criminal who was arrested for kidnapping a teenager in 1993, was being interrogated at a federal prison in 2010 when he confessed to Laurie's murder. Hall is already serving a life sentence for the 1993 kidnapping, but from the North Carolina prison where he's being held, he told investigators that he'd traveled from his home in Indiana to Wisconsin for a Civil War convention in 1992, a type of event which he was known to participate in. Larry met Laurie at her job, where he had purchased a t-shirt from her. After following her to Mark's apartment complex, Larry said that he lured her to his van by claiming there was a flaw in the t-shirt. He then told investigators that he'd attacked Laurie and buried her body in a rural area of south-central Wisconsin. However, police have since searched the area thoroughly, including with ground-penetrating radar and specially trained dogs, and it's come up empty. Without any physical evidence, police are unable to confirm Larry's confession. Although it's been almost 13 years since he confessed, Larry has not been convicted of Laurie's killing. However, he has been implicated without convictions in as many as 40 other attacks throughout the Midwest in the 1980s and 1990s. The third primary suspect in Laurie's case has not been publicly identified. A recent podcast that focused on Laurie, called Cold Case Frozen Tundra, has given the unknown man the pseudonym of Tim. Tim worked at the Gap store at the Fox River Mall, located across from the store where Laurie worked. In 2007, police disclosed that Tim had asked Laurie out on the day that she went missing. According to reports, when she told him that she had a boyfriend, Tim grew upset. Later that night, Tim showed up at a friend's gathering in Appleton acting strangely before anyone knew that Laurie was missing. Tim's behavior was reportedly so unusual that he made partygoers uncomfortable. While at the party, Tim drew a sketch of a man standing behind a woman with a knife at her back. Police later obtained this sketch, and it's held in evidence. However, because they didn't learn about Tim until a few months after Laurie vanished, investigators were unable to search his car, which he had since sold and scrapped. According to Cold Case, Tim, who had a juvenile record at the time, went on to commit a number of crimes against women as an adult. For this reason, the investigative team behind the podcast believes that he's the most likely suspect. Although police are aware of Tim, they continue to work all angles, and as recently as August of 2022, told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that the department was unable to comment on an active investigation. Laurie's case is currently being investigated by Special Agent Jay Yerges at the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation. Anyone with information should contact the division at 608-266-1671. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.